think let's go ahead and start with you, Tom, in terms of what you're seeing out there, being in food and beverage, obviously a unique industry. How things are progressing for you in terms of recruiting. I know you're not recruiting much in the U.S., but what you're seeing in terms of other parts of the world, and if there are any unique difficulties or challenges around recruiting and attracting talent in your industry.
I think, to be fair, there are huge differences between, for example, Europe and Japan. And that is coming from the, you can say, like socioeconomic, also historical context, where, like when we are hiring in Japan, very well established company, number one on the market, great, products, beer business is, like very attractive for many people. But at the same time, like on the Japanese market, you don't see a traditional lot of movement. So it's very different, compared to here, actually, where I think we do have actually companies that are usually number one, number two on the European market. So we can build on quite a strong brand. So our experience is that, like obviously the market has been tough for a couple of years, changing, it's going up and down. But at the same time, like we can still build on brands because people know them, and that's a good, that's a great advantage. What we struggle usually is like very specific skills, and we know that like for example for brewing, like you don't find a lot of people on the market who are available, and we are one of the biggest employers. That means like we actually employ a lot of people in that industry. So it's hard to find anybody like on the market who would fit the profile. And also we do a lot of like direct, like it's a lot about brands. So for example, brand marketing, very like specific, unique skills. So all these things, like we tend to track on a regular basis what's the situation in the market, and those are our watch out flags, like where we try to understand what's happening. Also, like partner with universities, also like people from the very early stage of their career to understand, like different sources, like of talent, because quite a lot of people, they are attracted to the business, but like it's a very competitive market here in Europe.
Yeah,
so a couple of things like this. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yes. And I know, and one of the things I wanted to, get the feedback from our panelists also is, how often you're now hiring people from outside of your industry. I know in the US here over the last, couple of years since the pandemic began to slow a little bit, the demand for talent was so high. There were so many positions that were open that were going unfilled that a lot of companies in the US began to look outside of their industry for the first time in a long time to find great talent. And some companies even, went so far as to hire more junior people that they would groom or develop and mentor into senior level positions. So it should change the strategy here in the U.S. for sure. Jennifer, do you want to maybe comment on that in terms of what you saw at Kia and even now as you begin your consulting also, are you seeing that opening up of hiring from outside the industry?
Certainly, Ken. Thank you for the comments also, Tom. A lot of similarities, actually, even though it's amongst different countries. But yeah, I mean, I think, for Kia, but also what I've seen even while at Kia with other organizations in the US or globally, but also since I left Kia a few months ago, I think there's a good mixture. It depends on, obviously, in spaces like HR or finance or IT or some of these types of areas, it's a lot easier to hire people out of industry. When you work for a company like Kia, which is obviously very specific, there are going to be certain areas where it's going to behoove the organization to try and find somebody in industry. But when you think about what happened during the pandemic and sort of still what's happening, and I'm an example of this, right? You had a lot of opportunities open up that maybe weren't there even at the very beginning of 2020. And this is going to go towards the succession planning discussion as well. But there was a lot more opportunity, not only for people internally to have that, growth opportunity, but people externally to come in as well. And like you said, even some people coming in who may not be as experienced as you would have expected also coming from other states and other countries, I think opening this up, particularly during the pandemic, why most positions were remote, you had that opportunity as well. So, I think even though our unemployment has gone down relative to what it was during the pandemic, I still think there's a ton of opportunity out there. You hear things like the Great Resignation, or what I heard even in the last few months since I left Kia, the quiet quitting. Is that the term? Quiet quitting. So there's certainly some opportunities that have made themselves available since then, since the pandemic started.
Yeah, it definitely has changed quite a bit. No, I agree. And I think that's one of the things that, I don't know if you call it a silver lining or not with the pandemic, but in terms of allowing people to come in and be hired for different kind of positions, or to be seen as being mentored longer term, as folks that are more experienced, that are more senior, are starting to retire also, we need to bring in that new level of talent, that new group of employees, to help them move up through the organization as well. Estelle, I'm curious on your side, given that you're in a startup that's grown dramatically in a very short amount of time, from, I think you said 5 employees just less than 2 years ago to now over 200 plus. How have you hired? And I'm curious about not only the hard technical skills that you're looking for, but also how do you assess whether or not somebody is the right fit to join a startup in terms of their softer skills? Can they handle communicating and moving very quickly and making fast decisions as part of a startup? I'm curious about how you assess that when you're hiring people.
Well, it's the $1,000,000 question actually you're asking, Ken, here. As the Aurora product is very complex, our software solution is meant for basically all cross-border trade players who send goods to Europe, to help them to be compliant, to pay the taxes correctly to every single European Union country. And it means that our team has both very strong technology, engineering, machine learning, data skills are needed, and lots of tax and customs experts needed globally from different regions. And basically the knowledge doesn't come from the startup sector, really. Logistic industry or custom industry has not been the first choice for startups so far, but thanks to the European Union regulations, it's the huge pain point to solve for the industry. And how to hire? Well, I have to be honest, the first 10 make the difference. So first 10 people brought in the next 25. Every fourth of our team members globally have been joining thanks to people who are working here or who have been recommended by our own people. So it's the huge importance who are the first 10, 20 members of your team. And the second is flexibility. In order to hire people globally so quickly, you cannot be very restrictive or very heavily regulated internally. You rather adjust yourself for people needs. And I would say that if we take the economic situation away, if we take the inflation away, then the biggest challenge is that people want to work for you, but not from the country where you are located. And actually, the country is also not the one they are the residents of tax residents of. So you constantly need to navigate between maybe 2-3 locations and find a way to onboard people. And it's not like one-time thing. People are constantly moving in technology and in the startup sector. So it's the startup world is new every day, 9 o'clock, new life. And this is what we need to survive well.
No, you're exactly right. And in the US, and we have obviously 50 states, and every state has a different set of labor laws, compensation, non-disclosure agreements, all the things that you can do, or even questions that you can ask people. In California, for example, where I'm based and where Jennifer is based, we're not allowed to ask applicants what their current compensation is. If they volunteer the information, we can use it, but we can't ask them. But that's only true in about 18 states. So you have to be very aware of the labor laws and what's happening in the other areas that you might be recruiting for, because it's not all the same, similar to what you're talking about in Estonia and different countries. Joachim, I'm curious. So on the other side of the spectrum, so whereas Estelle and Aurora are a startup company, obviously Hubner has been around for a long time, well known, well established industrial manufacturing company. How is it for you in terms of bringing talent in and attracting talent?
Yes, what we see is that it's more difficult to attract people in the last months during the pandemic situation. That's a point. That means we have to invest more energy to bring people to our company. Also, you need speed in the process. That means if you have not a decision after 3 or 4 weeks, then you will lose the best candidates in the pipeline. And what we also see is that as an employer, you have mandatory points in benefit and compensation. That means the people would like to have flexibility in work from home. That's for sure. Otherwise, the process is finished at the beginning. And this has changed in the last 3 years, definitely. And what we also see is that Hübner also looking for different skills in the market. That means regarding on the business segments, different competencies are necessary. So we cannot looking for 100% profile. We have to find talents with a good personality, with the right spirit for our company, and then it's better to go for a learning session, a learning course, and also a learning journey and combine it with the compensation. This is a better way as to looking for 100% recruiting project. You will never find the right people, in my opinion. So it depends on the target group, definitely. But what we have to do is that we have to invest more for the internal development to bring the people to the right level. That's my personal opinion and the experience we had in the last months.